Hooked up here, Pro Tim. There we go.
Thanks, sir. Do I need to put all these on, or are they going to be good just sitting in front of me? Honest question.
It's good to sit on the table for me.
Okay.
I don't know about the other guys. Got your power suit on.
Man, I've gotten so fat, I've only got a couple seats to fit me anymore. So.
I feel like we had this conversation in the first place.
Yeah, we did, and then I lost a bunch of weight, and then I bought some new suits thinking they would, and I threw old ones away, and
I feel your pain.
it's, man, you don't look like it.
Sean dresses great. That one guy got in your
Okay.
grill years ago.
Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. Just want to walk you through the day and then open it up to questions. I truly walked into the building today not knowing if we would sine die or not. Actually, I thought we would not because I had been getting some now faulty intel that the governor may actually show up. I walked into leadership at 8 a.m. this morning and told them that if the governor showed up at 10 a.m., we would have to stay around and hear him out and stay in session. That's the reason you saw us this morning at 9 a.m. Adjourn to the call of the chair rather than adjourning for the day. Recessing, rather than adjourning, because we wanted to give the governor the benefit of the doubt that he would actually show up and defend his plan. Very disappointed that he chose not to. It's not like he was out of the country. It's not like he was out of the state. He was downstairs. He was 3 floors down holding a press conference called, obviously, after we had invited him to the 10 a.m. We even held up the start of the appropriations and budget meeting to afford him the opportunity to slam us for a while downstairs and then come upstairs and present his plan. When I don't know which one of you, but one of you asked if he was going to be coming to the, it was you, so I was able to get our meeting started. I got text from staff that he had said he's not coming, and so I went up to Senator Thompson and said it's time to move on. He's not going to be here. It's the height of irony and hypocrisy to put in a call for budget transparency and then say, I'm willing to meet behind closed doors with your caucus, but I'm not willing to meet in an open meeting. To be clear and abundantly clear and transparent with you, he has not requested from myself or the caucus chair a meeting with our caucus. He has insinuated that in press conferences. He also has insinuated that him and the speaker and I continue to meet every Tuesday. That is not true. We meet on Tuesday during session and during session only. We have not met since May. I don't know what the governor really wants other than what he tweets and what he told you all at the press conference today. I saw his plan, cut spending and cut taxes. I have yet to see him present a budget that does the first part of that. He, this most recent year, presented the largest budget, proposed executive budget of any governor in state history. We were hoping we could ask him some questions today. I had told the caucus we must be respectful, we must be on point about the special session call and nothing else. I do think, and I want to commend the members of both the Republican and Democrat caucus in the Senate, we had a serious meeting today, and for those of you who were able to pay attention to it, there were really good questions. I appreciate that Treasurer Russ, he was able to find his way up the 3 flights to the chamber, to the Senate room 535 and testify. And it was very helpful testimony, actually. Commissioner Polk did a good job. Souter found the time to come and visit with the Senate Appropriations and Budget, but the governor, the very person whose signature was on the special session call and whose name is on the Twitter account, that continues to tweet out about it simply has a plan. I don't know if he controls his Twitter account or if staff does, but it's not respectful of the chamber, the Senate chamber, to not even be willing to talk to us and give us a plan. So we sine died. Very rational question you may have is, did I communicate that to the governor or speaker before we did it? No. We made a decision in a lunch that I provided to members of the caucus, and then we conferred with the minority caucus before we walked on the floor, so I knew I had the votes for it. The governor may very well call us into another special, and we will undoubtedly, if he does so, expect him to show up and present a plan to the Appropriations and Budget Committee. So I'll take any questions people have. I wish we were here talking about when are we going to meet to try to come up with a plan, but the governor didn't present a serious plan. He continues to run away from the Strobel case, which I thought was the whole impetus for the special session based on the reading of the special session call. But even his OMES director today seemed completely uninformed on what the governor was trying to do on the trigger bill about the Strobel case, or at least that's the way I interpret it, that it's about the Strobel case. So open it up to any questions people may have.
What do you make of this argument the governor said that you have a $5.4 million surplus that can afford us tax cuts?
You know, we asked some really good questions of the people who presented today, especially Treasurer Russ, about how do you break that $5.4 billion down. And Anthony Salmons on our staff did a good job of breaking it down as well. There are some of those funds that are set aside for very specific purposes. 1017 fund for education, FMAP savings account for Healthcare Authority Medicaid, Medicaid recipients. We set aside revenue from the Oil and Gas Stabilization Fund, and that's how we have gotten to this point. Indeed, it would be a great question to ask of the governor sometime. Hey, you say we have record surplus, and you say the legislature spends every dime it gets its hand on. How do you reconcile those two? That we have record surpluses, yet you say the legislature spends every dime. By its very definition, we're not spending every dime because we have record surpluses. We don't believe the governor's number is accurate. He counts in some monies that we would not count in there. But he at least owes it to us to come and explain how he arrived at those numbers.
Have you had discussions with Grover Norquist at all? Were you surprised to see him at today's press conference with the governor?
Grover, no. I mean, Grover has come out and like tweeted at me on every tax thing in the past. I didn't know he was going to necessarily be there today. I had heard wind. I'd gotten rumors of it last night, so I wasn't shocked to see him there. However, the part I watched, now I had to go into appropriations and budget before his part was over, but he was just giving an overview of all the states and really more of an academic exercise, not advocating for one thing or another. Obviously, Americans for Tax Reform, it's a special interest group that advocates for lower taxes, so it's not shocking that he would want to have lower taxes. It's just he's not an expert in how Oklahoma's system works, and I think that's important. Treasurer Russ, he is very right to point out that states like Kentucky have cut taxes and also seen bond rating increases. Where Oklahoma is different, where we are unique, is we have State Question 640 embedded in the Constitution in Article 5, Section 33. I have sat before those bond rating agencies, both here in the state and in New York City. And I can tell you that they are intensely focused on how State Question 640 impacts our ability to actually govern long term. I think those are very salient points that Treasurer Russ alluded to.
Can you just synthesize why some members of your caucus think it's dangerous to cut income tax right now?
Yeah, I don't think it's, without reform, we want reform, and we have advocated reform. Now, the difficult part about is, what reform do you want? That is very hard to come up with. We have been studying it for roughly 16 months. And there's not a consensus on the best way to do it. Oklahoma's overall tax burden on our citizens is already in the top 10. We are, according to the Tax Foundation, we're doing quite well, relatively speaking. We want to cut income tax, but we want to do it in a way that's responsible and takes into account what we've done on school choice recently and the historic investments we've made. Many of us, I'm the longest serving now because of just special election, we lived through those cuts. And Treasurer Russ said that higher ed was cut by 2%. I think he just was mistaken. Surely he didn't mean that. It was cut by 15.9% back when I was vice chair of appropriations. We had serious cuts. Not because we thought higher ed was not worthy of investment, but because we didn't have money. And to just say cutting income tax generates revenue automatically, I'm a believer in that if you give people more money, they know how to spend it more wisely, and it eventually benefits the state. However, to take that one item and say, look, we cut it in 2022 and we're seeing increased revenue, that's a true statement. But what is not taken into account is fuel, gas and diesel, cigarette, and GPT was also raised in that 56 legislature before then. And that's the reason you heard me asking about how much do you attribute? What is the part that is attributable to that? Because we did cut taxes in the 2010 timeframe, and we did not see that increase in revenue like we have seen in recent years. So, people always have, sometimes I have simple answers for why, this or that policy works. Income taxation in general is a very complicated mix that we can't just do in a day or a week without having some kind of agreement.
Do you see your caucus being a little more open to talking about potentially cutting the income tax, assuming there's no other special sessions, when you all come back in February for the regular 4 months?
If we have a plan. We cut it in 2022. So we keep talking about 2 years ago. We talk in terms of sessions. We cut it in 2022. And we cut corporate in 2022. We cut franchise this year. We cut the marriage penalty this year. And so we've cut over the last 5 years $750 million. I keep saying roughly $1 billion. It's $750 million. Now, the governor hasn't signed all those. He vetoed 2 of those. So he vetoed the sales tax on vehicles that we had reduced, and then he vetoed the House's rebate plan that we passed too.
The governor mentioned like a 0.25% cut in the income tax. Is that, granted it wasn't a plan, but is that something that is more palatable than a complete zero out? Or?
I don't know, because we don't know what he envisions for it. I mean, he told it to you all at a press conference. He's put it on a tweet. But we haven't heard what his long-term strategy is. A 0.25 point, what, $250 million annualized, is that doable? I tell you, he rejected it when I offered it in April or May when we were trying to close the school choice debate down. When I was trying to, I went into a Tuesday, one of the last Tuesday breakfasts we had, and suggested that if the House dropped the Oklahoma Student Fund and adopted our income thresholds, that I would go for a 0.25 point then. I could sell it. They rejected that then. And so I have not heard from him how he envisions the 0.25 point. I saw an interview recently on a local news station where he, in like a moment of 30 seconds, he talked about a quarter, a half, 3/4, and then talked about a grocery tax, which a grocery tax isn't even in this call. There's an argument about, does a 0.25 point alone, does it fit within this call? Because it talks about getting with I can't remember the exact language, but with a strategy to get to zero. So I welcome hearing him out, but we gave him that opportunity at 10 a.m. He chose to not avail himself of that opportunity.
What was the vote in your caucus to sine die?
I don't know how many of them voted on the floor. It was a majority of the people that were in. We didn't have an official caucus position on it, but it was in the 20s somewhere.
Would you say a majority of your caucus?
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of this has come down to communication problems. What did you make of the governor and speaker somewhat joining forces this morning? Were you invited to be part of that press conference?
No, I was not invited to be a part of the press conference. And you know, he also said on your channel that all of us were invited to some tax discussion he had about special session. That is not true. He did not. You ought to ask him for records of the emails that went out, because I was not invited, and most of my members of my caucus were not invited. But no, I wasn't invited. But it's not my first rodeo. I've seen the speaker and the governor team up in my 5 years multiple times. It doesn't intimidate me. It doesn't scare me. I've got a caucus that I respond to. I've got a district that I respond to, and I've got Oklahomans to be answerable to. We've got to leave this place better than we found it. And to cut revenue is doable if you have a plan. I've not seen a plan yet.
This may be, I guess it doesn't matter now, special session's over, but I thought the third part of his call regarding transparency on budget stuff, I thought it was interesting. I asked the speaker about it, and I'll tell you what he said if you're interested. But the concept of a 72-hour or some window by which budget bills would have to sit, essentially, so that lawmakers, agencies, media, the public could review that. I thought about this May when, I know it was not ideal, but it was 11:30-ish that the budget bills got posted online. And there was like 9:30 a.m. JCABs the next morning. And I'm just curious, as you prepare to depart in a year and go back to being a citizen and not a legislator, do you think there's some value to the idea of having a grace period for people to actually read where hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent?
Well, I think publishing the bills and the public conversation are two separate things. I'm a citizen right now, by the way. I'll be a citizen, no longer have the hyphen of legislator here in a year. But I don't think the governor, in Trevor Pemberton, his general counsel's briefing on the suit he gave against me and the speaker, he referenced a constitutional inferiority complex about the governor. Like he in quotes, he said, it's not like the governor has some kind of constitutional inferiority complex. I think he may. I think he wants to get in the budgeting process. And his House district's open. If he wants to have a vote on the budget and be a part of that, there's an open House seat where he resides, special election. However, transparency in and of itself has value. I did not like the way the budget went down this past session. No offense to my appropriations chair and vice chair of the team. They did yeoman's work when all the oxygen was sucked out of the room to focus on school choice. I was almost singularly focused on how do we get school choice done last session. And when the budget came out, many of the things that were in there, some of them House priorities, I was quite agitated. And so I have been, along with my appropriations chair and vice chair and staff, been working on a budget transparency that's going to blow his proposal out of the water. We will be advancing a resolution with the Senate position on budgets, including a spreadsheet, within the first 5 to 7 weeks of session. There will be no question where the Senate is. But to get to that, we will have public meetings the entire time where subcommittee chairs have meetings with agencies, and then subcommittee chairs present what their proposed budget is for their area and have to argue that in front of the full appropriations committee, not behind closed doors, but in an open public space. I don't know why his staff hasn't kept him afloat of what's going on in discussions in JCAB and the others heretofore. I can't fix that for him, but what I can fix or try to improve, seek to improve, and I'm committed to it, is transparency on the Senate side, and you will see us deliver on that.
mentioned school choice, if we've got a second, any update on from your knowledge or your end or the Senate on how the tax commission's rules are shaking out and how that process is gonna unfold? We asked you, I think, in June, and you're still new.
Yeah. So I've enunciated my concerns. I have several concerns to the tax commission, both verbally and in an email to them, about what I'd like to see. Their proposed changes haven't reflected my concerns yet, but I will. The Oklahoma Tax Commission has been very open to input from myself and others. I've found them to be desirable to make sure that this is implemented in a way that we're all successful. I still think there's some shortcomings on it. Just a few practical examples. I don't think if you have 3 children or 4 children, you should have to submit 3 or 4 applications. I think you should be able to do it in one application. I don't think you should just have an open period in November or December. I think you need to have one in the fall, because I think if you just have it in November or December, all of a sudden you have the only people who are currently enrolled in private school will really be able to afford themselves if it's mid-year like this, and my heart is for those people who are trapped in a school that doesn't currently meet their needs, and I think you have to have an open enrollment in the fall. People who are currently enrolled in private school, man, I'm glad they're getting a benefit if they qualify income-wise, but they've already found a way to do it. They're going to be told by their private school about this opportunity. We've got to get the word out, and just having one time for parents to apply for it is unacceptable in my mind, but I've voiced those type of concerns with them. There's also some concerns about if people are in arrears on taxes, do you pull it? Is it going to be taxable by the state? We can't really control on the federal side if there's a tax burden that's created by this credit. But those are all I've articulated directly to the tax commission myself. I've had staff follow up with an email articulating exactly what my concerns are, and I'm hopeful that they'll address those.
I'm sorry to jump back, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. You said that to cut revenue is doable if the governor had a plan, but what do you mean by that? Do you mean like how you would make up for the revenue, or where the revenue would get cut, or what exactly?
Just a plan. A tweet does not suffice as a plan. A press conference does not suffice as a plan. But coming down and sitting down and sharing with us and with all of Oklahoma, is this sustainable? I think there were some very good lines of questions today on how much is of our budget surplus and our budget trajectory impacted by the federal dollars flowing through both in the local and the state. We need to really know what we're doing before we do it. And if he's articulating or trying to get triggers in place, we don't have the best experience with triggers. Triggers kind of trigger me because I've seen if we don't get them right, there's egg on a face, there's potential real downside for the budget, and then there's a political downside because you have to come right back in after you promise something and have to undo it. And so I just want to be thoughtful. Like, I don't know, and I still haven't, maybe it was Grover Norquist's schedule, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't know why he called us in on a Tuesday and not a Monday. I don't know why he called us in on October 3rd and not last week. He hasn't discussed, maybe he's told you all, but he hasn't told me his reasoning for what the urgency is right now. He talked in a local TV interview about grocery taxes, and that's completely a void from his call. He even talked about it today in the press conference and said, well, the legislature doesn't like me to be too specific. That's not true. Specificity is a good thing. In fact, oftentimes a criticism to me, but I take it as a compliment, he tells me that I major in the minors. And I know that's a criticism, but details matter, especially when you're talking about historic investments in education. We're getting rid of deficient bridges. That is something that the previous administration started and we funded, and we have made real progress in that arena. We've made real progress in empowering parents. We've made real progress in mental health, although we still have a way to go. I mean, we need to have a real conversation. He keeps saying, let's cut spending. I have yet to see him submit a budget that cuts spending. At the end of last session, he was decrying all the rhinos, the quote-unquote rhinos, for supporting OETA funding. That's all good and well, but his budget at the beginning of the year funded OETA at the same levels that it had done before. And so I'm not in a race to be the most popular among national groups that are think tanks or national special interest groups. I want to leave Oklahoma better than I found it, and to the extent that I can control that, I'm going to fight, even if it's not popular, to make sure that we have a sustainable path.
For you, how big of a priority will income tax and a tax plan in general be next legislative session?
You know, I don't know. We'll have to see. Like I said, 16 months we've been working. In fact, our House counterparts have been involved in some discussions too on that. It's a heavy lift. There's a reason that Frank Keating, Brad Henry, Mary Fallon, and Kevin Stitt haven't been able to deliver on like a move to like a consumption tax. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. You start getting certain people saying, hey, we shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. We all, in theory, have agreed to varying degrees that we should. Some of us wanted to broaden the base so we could lower the income tax. Some wanted to broaden the base just to have a more sustainable revenue. But those governors, they've all talked about it. And they haven't been able to deliver on it because it's hard to get to an agreement on and make sure that you have more winners than you have losers, because there's losers in anything you do. And so my number one priority going into next session will to get this budget transparency right and get it done on our terms.
Can I ask you about two projects?
One more question.
You mentioned mental health
Mhm.
and OU's Pediatric Behavioral Health Hospital that the legislature got some funds to. I don't know if you heard an update on that. Is that the sort of thing that might need more money to get completed or anything there? And then the other thing, I'm just curious your thoughts. You're from Northeast Oklahoma. There's a theme park proposal that has landed in Craig County, and I was just curious if you've been brought any information about how that might unfold and what might be necessary.
Man, that's a wide array. What was your first question?
Behavioral health hospital.
Behavioral health, okay. COVID really exposed the severity of mental health within youth especially. We all knew that mental health was a huge growing problem nationwide, and Oklahoma's not immune to that. As far as your specific question about have I been updated on the OU pediatric behavioral health, no, I haven't received an update in a while on that. It's a huge priority. It's something the Senate really wanted to see get done. And so now that you brought it to my attention, I'll start looking into it again. As far as the theme park, early on, one of the senators from Northeast Oklahoma told me that there were some people poking around looking at Oklahoma. I keep hearing that there's no revenue, but then I keep hearing about infrastructure, and so I don't know where the truth lies on that. I haven't been read into it fully. Thank you all. I appreciate it very much.